from Surprise in Arizona. Hope you're having a super fantastic sparkling day. Welcome to Before the Dirt Nap podcast number 1982, Laughter in the Family, Joyful Tales from the Past. So I apologize for being on so late. I actually got lost in this thing. I was looking at reels and TikTok videos and stuff, and I have a friend, and we send each other funny videos backwards and forwards and just bring laughter and joy into each other's day. And so it got me thinking about, maybe on the podcast tonight we could talk about laughter, the benefits of laughter. Well, we all know the benefits of laughter. The real good belly laughs are an internal exercise. It's exercise for your internal organs. If you do the really deep belly laughs, they always raise the vibration levels. And if you know about the law of attraction and all those other philosophies out there and everything else, the positive vibes and raising your vibration level will attract more to you if you are in a place coming from a high vibration level. Laughter helps you get up there. It makes you feel good. Have you ever tried to laugh and frown at the same time? If you're laughing, you can't stay mad at something. You could go back to it, but you can't be mad and laughing at the same time. You just can't. You just can't. Don't even bother trying. And now frown. But so I thought, well, how about laughter and genealogy? How are they related? So yes, I suddenly realized like about 5 minutes ago that I was not online, and I said to my friend, I said, "Oh crap, I'm late." And she's like, "Oh my gosh, go get online." And so here I am online. So but when it comes to laughter and family, there's going to be some stories in your family that are just going to crack you up. But just because of sometimes it'll just be because of the sheer stupidity. What on earth made them think that they could do that and get away with it? Or it could be just something that just happened that had everybody laughing and was just a good story that like a fine wine matured and improved over time. You can always have that one. Every family has one. That one person that when they walk in the room, you feel them walk into the room. They have that energy about them that when they walk in the room, you know that you don't even have to be watching the door. You just feel their presence when they walk into the room. And that's that one person that no matter what's going on, they will also always find that moment where just the right word or the right line is added in and they've got everybody laughing and that whole vibration in the room just lifts. Brad and I used to banter backwards and forwards the entire time when he would have hospital stays, especially about on the East Coast. There's very different energy levels between East Coast and West Coast when it comes to hospital care. On the East Coast, he would have nurses fighting over who was going to look after his room that day, look after Brad in his room. Because we just always had so much fun. I mean, it was a tough time that we were going through. You know, he'd been through major surgery. He had what they call a lower interior resectional, where they had removed your rectum is about 12 inches long, and they had removed 10 inches of that because they ended up taking like about 18 inches of colon and rectum to make sure they got all the along with the lymph nodes to make sure they got all the cancer out. And he had this big zipper scar that it was. It was called the zipper scar because by the time I took the staples out and it healed up, it looked like a zipper that was done up. We had to find the laughter. During the tough times, laughter is what got us through. We would have banters backwards and forwards. Brad would, my favorite one. My favorite one was the smuggling pizzas into Bosnia. I go in one day and he's going, "Man, this morphine stuff's really good." I'm going, "Why?" And he turns around and says, "I have the best dreams under this stuff." And I says, "Okay, what dream did you have?" And he said, "I was smuggling pizzas into Bosnia in the back of an 18-wheeler. And I went, "Okay, I can see why that's fun." Yep. And it just started me laughing. But then later that day, a couple of guys from his work came in to visit him. Now, his work are full of jokers. These guys, they would get together, the wives were invited along as well. And we would have a get together like once a month, once every other month. We'd choose a restaurant, we'll go in, we'd sit down, and we'd just have a nice jolly evening of friendship and laughter. And then we'd all go back to one of the places and just continue our evening there. And then we'd all even go home. And it was just a really cool night out. And they had a couple of pranksters in that group. And we were constantly laughing. I mean, I get exhausted being in groups of people because I am an introvert, and my energy levels are restored when I have alone time. So and we usually did these on a Friday, sometimes on a Saturday. And if I'd been on Friday, I'd been at work all day. And if it'd been a Friday where a class had ended at work, then of course I was extra tired because we're doing cleanup and all of that at the end of the day after the classes have been dismissed. We're doing all the cleanup and everything else, putting everything back in order. So we come in on Monday, the training center was pristine, ready to go. If there was another class coming in, if there wasn't, it was good. And we didn't have to do anything. We didn't have to worry about it. So there's days that I was exhausted, and then being with a group of people, that was pulling my energy out of me as well. But I will tell you, I wasn't exhausted so much from the drainage of people. I was exhausted from laughing so much, because I have a problem where if I laugh too much, I sometimes forget to breathe. And then I go into these coughing convulsions. And when Brad would see me starting to do this, all I could hear him, he would come over to me and he would just, or from across the room, if he could see I was starting to go into that, all I could hear was, breathe, Helen, breathe, breathe, Helen, breathe. And to this day, when if I get into one of those coughing convulsions, because I'm laughing too hard at something I've seen on a movie or read in a book, I will tell you, I have got a great book series that will keep you, two great book series that will keep you laughing. They've got these great one-liners in there and these great incidences. And in fact, there's one that's, they're just really, really cool. And they will keep you laughing. And if I get into one of those convulsive laughs, all I can hear in my ear is, breathe, Helen, breathe, breathe, Helen, breathe. So Brad's right there with me, even though he's not here physically, but he's in my ear telling me to breathe. And I literally have to try and calm myself down and take some breaths to keep going. And Zeffie, she gets concerned and she comes over and just like looks at me. That's all she does. She just looks at me. Which came with the expression on her face, set me off again. But, but you would have somebody in your family that is that prankster, that is that person that knows how to raise the vibration level in the room, that brings the hilarity into the room at the right moment. And it's not done in a disrespectful way. They are the people that, in a very respectful way, will help raise the vibration in the room, especially if it's something the family's come together, it's something serious they've been discussing. And then everybody needs to release some tension, and they are very good at being able to raise the vibration level so that people release the tension through laughter and helps the body come down. Laughter is very good for stress relief, very good for stress relief. If you can also, if you have, if you want to do a self-care package so that when you get into situations and you need to, I always try, I don't like serious situations. I hate serious situations. I'm always looking, how can I turn this around? How can I make it lift the vibration in the room? Because I don't like it when I feel pressure pushing down on my shoulders. I've got to find a way to laugh. A lot of the times it's looking at videos of stupid things that people do. Like I was watching, this one just popped into my head. The guy's sitting there he's got a golf game, he's got a little setup there, and he's got a tea set up, and he puts a big marshmallow on top of it. His mate's standing across, just across the backyard there, leaning up against the house with his mouth open. And the guy's trying to chip the marshmallow into this guy's mouth. Two shots. That was all it took. 2 shots. I'm like, okay, guys, how do you come up with this stuff? How do you come up with this crazy stuff that's out there with, like tossing pins into a cup or figuring out some sort of track for a ping pong ball to go down and end up in something at the end? Or what was the other one I saw? Oh yeah, you get the gaming unit and you've got it standing there so that the disc, and you're trying to toss the disc into the slot. I'm like, how do you come up with this stuff? And some of the stuff they do is really amazing and it will tell them how many times they attempted it before they got it, and like the look of disbelief on their face when they actually achieve it is absolutely hilarious. So laughter is always a good thing. Laughter does help you through difficult times. It helps bring levity. I've talked about that with Brad being in hospital. We would always have a banter thing going backwards and forwards, and the nurses loved it. They loved coming in, and they loved because they could always hear the laughter coming out of our room. I don't know what Brad's roommate ever thought of laughter. But anyway, back to the story with the pizzas. That's right. That's how I started all this. So these 2 guys came in from his work, and so Brad told them about this dream that he had that previous night. And these two guys, and they were all software engineers, all software architects. So they're the ones that like design the programs, and the programs go in and program them. It's kind of like a level above programming. So they've all been programmers over their life. And now they were like that next level up where they actually design the programs, and then the programmers go and do the programming. And so they have these engineering minds with them. I sat there for 30 minutes. I had tears coming down my face. I was laughing so hard. I was almost convulsing as they in detail planned exactly how they were going to smuggle these pizzas in the back of an 18-wheeler with a pizza oven in the back going. That was a wood-burning pizza oven. And they had a way to disperse the smoke so you couldn't see the smoke coming out of the top of the 18-wheeler. But not only that, they also figured out how they were going to hide messages in the pizza for the spies that they were delivering the pizzas to in Bosnia. And this is back in 2008, just to give you a frame of reference. And I'm just sitting there, and they would go back and they go, okay, so we've got this part sorted. Okay, so next we could do, and they would paint it out in such detail that by the end of 30 minutes, I figured out that I was listening to them resumming everything that they were going to do. And I'm like, the way they made it sound, that it would actually work. That was the funniest piece of the whole. I mean, the whole thing that Brad had this dream about smuggling pizzas into Bosnia and 18-wheeler was absolutely hilarious. But the fact that these three guys put their heads together and literally came up with a step-by-step plan on exactly how they were going to do it. And I'm like thinking, oh my gosh, they could actually do that. So, when you're in times of struggle, find a way to raise the vibrations. When you raise the vibrations, it helps relieve some of the stress that you're under during those times. And whenever I'm thinking of that, I always flash back to In Sound of Music when they're hiding, when they go to the abbey to hide, and they're all behind the tombstones there, and little Greta wants to know, can we sing about our favorite things? It's like, no, you've got to be very quiet. There are times that you do have to be quiet with the laughter. I always remember watching Couplings. If you've never seen Couplings, it is a British version of Friends. That's the best way I can describe it. But there's a lot more to it. They took it to the next level. Friends came out first, and then Couplings came out a few years later. But Couplings took things to a different level than Friends did. And one of them, Jeff just has this, I can't even describe his brain. Just the weird stuff he comes out with is hilarious on its own. But he talked about the Gigaloop, and he's got beer glasses, and he's stacking them. Like, he'll put one the right way up, then he'll put the next one on top, upside down, so the rims were together, and then he'll put the bottoms together and do this. And he was talking about the Gigaloop, and this is when you're in a very serious place, in a very serious time, almost like a funeral, something like a funeral. And so you're there, and all of a sudden, for no reason whatsoever, you get the giggles, and you're trying to hold them in. And then the Gigaloop starts getting a little shaky, and you're holding it in, and you're holding it in, and it's the completely wrong time to burst out laughing, and you're holding it in, and you're holding it in, and your face is going bright red, and you're shaking because you're trying so hard to keep these giggles in, and you're trying to think of things to stop the giggling, and it's just making it worse. And then all of a sudden you just burst out with laughing, and and then everybody just like frowns at you like, what are you laughing at? And that's the Gigaloop. And that's times when laughing is not appropriate. So yes, that always reminds me of that scene. But who do you have in your family that helps alleviate the during the times of struggle, helps find the laughter in things? Because there are, even though if you're going through struggles and everything else, there are times that you can raise your vibration levels. And when you raise your vibration levels, it helps relieve this, like we said, it helps relieve the stress, but also too, it helps you think of the positive things that even though you're under duress at the time, under whatever circumstances are, there's some positive stuff that's going to come out of this, or there's some positive thoughts start going through your head. Like, well, I'm grateful that this happened there because now we've got this help, we've got this assistance. And you start thinking of things that you could be grateful for. This happened a lot during the 9 years, 8 months, and 3 days that Brad had dealt with his cancer. Every day, it didn't matter how depressing and down and out we were. We always found a way. Neither of us were down at the same time. If one was down, the other one was up, and we helped balance each other out. We helped lift that other person up, and we were never down together at the same time, which was, I don't know how that happened, but that's how it happened. There was times that I just was so stressed that I would just burst into tears. I remember one time we'd had dinner that evening, and so I had 2 plates and 2 forks, to go and put into the dishwasher. So I get the plate, gather the plates up with the forks. I walk over to the kitchen. I'm standing in front of the dishwasher, and just the thought of opening the dishwasher was too much for me. I just burst in. I put the plates down because I didn't want to drop them, and I just burst into tears. And Brad's like, "What's the matter?" I says, "I can't put this in the dishwasher." He says, "Why not?" I said, "It's too much." That was my thing to him. I could not put these in the dishwasher because it was too much to open the door. He says, "Fine." He says, "Let's use paper plates." I went, "Okay." The stress was suddenly lifted off me with a simple suggestion. We're not using crockery anymore. We're using paper plates. And that's what we did for the rest of the time that he had that horrible ileostomy, Freddie. Even that made us laugh. We used paper plates from then on out because I could not handle the thought of opening a dishwasher to put 2 plates and 2 forks into it. It was too much stress. And you will find times like that. And just by providing a simple solution, like, fine, then let's use paper plates. It was sort of like, oh, I don't have to worry about that now. And then a couple hours later, I was able to go over and put those plates and forks into the dishwasher, and we put the dishwasher and turned the dishwasher on. And that was the last time we used the dishwasher for like the next 3 months. We used paper plates after that, but it was just the thought of doing that. But we were able to find the humor in it later on. So, like, can you believe that you got stressed out over putting plates in a dishwasher? And there are times that you will look back on certain situations and at the time it was stressful. You were in tears. You couldn't see the way out of this thing. It was like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. And yet you look back on it a few months later, a few years later, and you're laughing about it. It suddenly became a funny situation. I will tell you this. I had my caregivers group, the caregivers group that I belonged to in back east. I had them in stitches one night because over the stupidest of things, because one of the stress things that I had is that Brad had this ileostomy. And for those that don't know what an ileostomy is, it's when they bring the small intestine to the skin, to the surface of the skin. And that's basically where your poop's going to come out of for however long you have to have the ileostomy in place, and it comes out into a bag. Well, Brad's was replaced in his stomach crease, so basically in his waistline. So whenever he bent, he split the seals and the bag would leak. And it became a very, very stressful time for me because if I couldn't be any more than 30 minutes away from home if I went out anywhere. If I went to do grocery shopping, if I wanted just to get out of the house for a bit and just spend some time by myself, go to my caregivers group, it couldn't be any more than 30 minutes because when he called, I knew I had about 30 minutes to get home, get that seal changed, or the acid from what was being expelled could burn his skin and we could end up with yeast infections. And then the seals wouldn't stick and then it was just a mess. And so I remember sitting there and the girl and the people in our group were trying so hard to help me relax and trying to find a way to release some of the stress of, well, could you have somebody come and sit with Brad? And I'm still like, well, nobody knows how to deal with an ileostomy. And because of where it was, Brad couldn't see it. So I had to change it when it needed changing. And I said, you don't understand. I said, this thing is, and so I'm sitting there describing step by step exactly what I have to do to change these. It's called an appliance, even though it's got the seal that goes against the skin in a bag, it's called an appliance. So I had to tell him how you had to change these appliances and the care you had to take. And he had to eat marshmallows, 20 minutes before we change for a scheduled change. And the reason, and even when his bag started leaking, he would start eating marshmallows. I don't think he ever ate a marshmallow after his ileostomy was reversed. And the reason that you ate the marshmallows is the marshmallow would actually slow down the output flow, the output flow. And sometimes you'd have to plug it up. You have to plug up the output to get everything in place and then put the appliance on. And then there's a way that you could get up through the bottom of the bag and then come up through the bottom of the bag to pull the plug out and then quickly do up the bottom of the bag, because the idea was the bag was worn for a few hours, a couple of days, preferably a couple of days. And when it got full, you had a way to empty it without having to take it off. And so, yeah, there was all sorts of stuff in there. And so I was explaining to this step-by-step instructions on exactly what I had to do to change the appliance. And they were just roaring with laughter. And I'm trying to be serious. I'm like, you don't get it. You don't get how stressful this thing is because it could explode at any moment. I mean, that's how it got its name. That's how Freddie got named. I had everything ready. I was about to put the thing on and it goes, and I went, Freddie. And Freddie was christened. And so he became Freddie after that. And then the funniest thing about that day is that Brad got a new roommate, and the roommate's stepfather's name was Fred. Yes. So there's a lot of hilarity in there. You can find stories. Look through newspaper articles about different things that happen. Even look through the court records and stuff. There was some stupid stuff or stupid reasons that came out in court cases. If you can find the court records and stuff, go through the court records, see if any of your ancestors were in there. What were they in there for? And what was, and sometimes it was for the stupidest of things, or they gave a stupid explanation, like the lamppost jumped in front of my car. Give that to somebody with a great memory, with a great imagination like me. And there's all sorts of scenes going on in my head about lampposts jumping out in front of cars. It's a mess. My head's a mess at times. There was one time my grandmother was staying with us, with my parents, and we were all having dinner one night, and my dad's youngest brother called to see how things were going. And my dad at the time, mum and dad at the time were excavating out their basement. They had a garage that went so far back, and then they decided, well, let's, what could we do to make it longer? And so to make it longer, they took out the brick wall that was there, and then they started excavating this rotted clay. It's what was back there, rotted clay. And they had a skip bin out there, and they were using a jackhammer, the ones that go do 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 do. I don't know what Kanga hammers, jackhammers. Those ones with the do 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 do, and it's got the little pokey sticky thing on the end that you just use to break down the thing. And so what would happen is that my grandmother was in her 70s at the time, and this is so funny. And Dad would go down there, and he'd have his earmuffs on, and he'd be working with the jackhammer there to break up this clay, and my grandmother would be there with the long-handed shovel, and she'd be picking it up and putting it into the wheelbarrow. When the wheelbarrow was full, she would tap on my dad's shoulder or on his back, and he would then stop the jackhammer, wheel the wheelbarrow out into the skip, tip it out, and bring it back for her, and they'd start all over again. And so when my uncles are absolutely hilarious. My dad and my uncles, when they get together, are absolutely hilarious. There's a lot of different bantering going backwards and forwards, a lot of jokes told, and all clean jokes, and all stories that are made funny and that were serious but are made funny. Did I tell you I came from a line of storytellers? So my dad gets on the phone there with his youngest brother, and he goes, "Oh yeah, we've had," and we can overhear the conversation. This was a landline. This was a phone that sat on a shelf with a receiver that you would pick up. So we're going back old school. These were not invented at the time. And my dad says to my uncle, he turns around and he says, "Oh yeah," he says, "Mum's doing great. We've had her we're using the jackhammer, and she's been doing a great job breaking up the clay down there," and just joking with his brother. And all of a sudden, I just start laughing, and everybody's sitting there. My dad's out in the hallway, and I just start laughing because I had this mental picture suddenly in my head of my grandmother with the jackhammer, and it's going do 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 do, and she's going off down the street with her legs flying out the back and she's hanging onto the jackhammer going down the street with her legs flying out the back. That was the image that suddenly popped into my head, and I just started roaring with laughter, and everybody sort of like looking at me really strange. So of course afterwards, when I calmed myself down, I had to explain why I started laughing and had everybody else laughing. So who is that person in your family that helps do that? Do you have a really good dynamics in your family? And has it been passed down through generations where there were always funny stories, or the stories were told in a way that would make people laugh? Laughter is great, and it's just such a great stress relief. So if you need a good laugh or anything, go find some videos, some reels to watch, but put a timer on. You might forget an appointment like getting on your live. But have a look back through time. Newspapers, court records, journals, diaries will all have stuff like this in there. And there are some wild tales out there. And when you read them, you're sort of like, that couldn't have happened. But remember, Mark Twain, I'm going to paraphrase this, once said that truth is stranger than fiction, and fiction has to make sense. What you said with that one. So those things that you think are not quite... Oh, there's my mum texting me. She texts me at the same time every day. Now I've lost my train of thought. Thanks, Mum. Who are the pranks? Do you have an ancestor that was known for his pranks or his jokes? Maybe not just on the family, but also in the community, helping bring joy and laughter into the community as well. Helping entertain the children or helping entertain seniors. Who in your family has that ability to be able to lift people up, raise the vibration so they're not feeling so down, that they have that spark, their spark is ignited and they can now nurture it with more laughter? Who is the person in your family that does that? Have you heard stories of ancestors or relatives that have done that through the generations? Find those stories. Like I said, newspapers, journals, diaries, court reports. Some of them are quite funny to listen to. And where else could you find them? Even in family history books. If they tell the stories in family history books, they will be written in there as well. So find those people in your family. Do you take after somebody in your family with the ability to tell a good joke, to the ability to bring laughter to other people's lives? So are you that person in your family and this generation? Who came before you that did what you do? And with that, did you have any stand-up comedians in your family? Check playbills. Check of the show. Look at theatre records of shows that were there and who played in those shows and what role did they play. Were they doing a comedy role? Were they doing a play? Were they a stand-up comedian? You can find records for them too. And so with that, we are out of here. Go out, have a super fantastic sparkling evening, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Pacific time. And this time I will try to remember to watch my clock. Hey, konera.